The numbers tell a story, and headlines paint a picture of the nation's largest public housing authority, some 11,000 employees strong, with 178,000 apartments spread across nearly 2,500 buildings. Buildings that are home to 1 of every 14 New Yorkers in this city. Now, it's a big system with some big issues. Issues that we can only begin to address during the course of this event. Now, we're aware of the limits of this forum, but we also know that there is brilliance within NYCHA communities. And tonight we're inviting you to be heard, to give voice to concerns and share your solutions, to join us in creating a living record so no one, whether elected official or casual observer, can ever say they didn't know about NYCHA and the cost of living. So welcome to this BHeard Town Hall that we're undertaking in partnership with the folks at the Economic Hardship Reporting Project. And as I said, we invite you to be heard, but right now we would also like for you to be seen. So Lindsay, can you help me out with the house lights for a second and let folks know who are here? So this is our community for the evening. This is the town in the town hall. So now that they can see you, I want to start this off on the right foot by asking all of you assembled here, thank you for being here, by the way. So how many of us here are from a NYCHA community? Give me a hand. All right. They've been talking about y'all. So right now, I want you to answer back. We're going to get into some issues and talk about solutions, but right now I want to know from you in your own voice, what is it about NYCHA that makes it a community worth fighting for, that needs all the attention outside of an election year? I'm looking at you without the 2 front teeth there. He has something to say. So who else is going to be as spirited as this young man? Come over here. I want you to stand next to me. So you come down here and tell me what makes the place that you live so awesome with this.
I live the place that is so awesome. We fight for our country. You
fight for your country and your home?
Yes.
Good for you. Thank you for coming down. All right. So the seal has been broken, and at the risk of trying to outdo him, I'm looking at you guys who over 21, or at least in the teenage realm, not to be ageist, has something to say about their community and why NYCHA is worth fighting for. I'm looking at you all the way over here. I should let everybody know by way of housekeeping that I have a voicemail on my account right now from this lady who told me what as we open this night, to keep what at the center of this whole conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Vines, for having this.
Yeah.
There was a meeting that was scheduled in the City Hall chambers today. It was Development and Privatization, chaired by VP Cressida White.
Yep.
It was canceled. This is the second meeting that was canceled. There's a smoke-free policy that's criminalizing tenants. You have 2 people from City Council here who will serve no purpose tonight. You need to hear from the residents.
Well, we're hearing from the residents, and you know what? Don't preempt them before they talk. We're looking for good things to talk about the community.
$75,000.
I'm not going to wind you up just yet. So who has something that they want to talk about that's great about the community before I interview you or introduce you to these folks?
Hi, I'm Carolyn Capistor. I live in Brownsville Housing. What's good about our community is because we actually live there, we work there, we sleep there, we indulge with our families and friends there. So we want our community to be better than what it is. In beautification, in where we live, bring new things to our environment where we live. So it has to be something positive that's definitely coming, within our neighborhood.
Okay. Anybody else before I make my way over here? Last word before we introduce you to our panel? What do you have? Stand up for us. Well, turn around there. Your friends are looking. Go.
Oh, yeah. So, well, I agree with both, of my elders, but I also really agree with the young man that spoke before me, because what's great about our community is that it is the working, laboring, fighting force of the city. And so without that, force, with that force being criminalized, and regardless of that, just what we go through walking out of that neighborhood, that's enough. The tragedies that we go through walking out of that neighborhood and surviving our workforce and coming back into our neighborhoods, that is more than enough for NYCHA to be represented in terms of what kind of community we are. You know, we basically are the community that this city is built on.
All right, I think somebody should clap for that. So, if you didn't get a chance to share, don't despair, because I'm looking at you. I took note, but I just want to let you know who's in the room. So we're going to have a conversation that goes back and forth, but just so you know, we've invited some folks who we think will help this conversation move along. I'm looking right now at you, Lisa Kenner. Lisa Kenner is not a stranger to many folks in the room. She's been a resident association president at the Van Dyke houses for a number of years. I don't know if you want me to say exactly how many, but we'll get to it. She's a woman of experience, and she definitely has something to say tonight. Thanks for being here, Lisa.
Thank you.
Nicholas Dagen Bloom is a doctor. He's a PhD. He's also written several books. He serves as the Associate Professor of Social Science and the Chair of Interdisciplinary Studies at NYIT. He's also the author of 8 books, including Public Housing That Works. So thanks for being here. And I'm looking right now at Greg B. Smith. He's an investigative reporter. I'm sure you've read him in the New York Daily News, where he is usually sticking it to NYCHA. So thank you for being here.
I do what I can.
I'm looking at Alicka Ampry-Samuel, who is a city council member representing the 41st District. She's also here in her capacity as the NYCHA chair on our city council. Thanks for being here, council member. And we're going to make it a twofer. We also have from the Bronx, Ritchie Torres, who is a former chair of NYCHA, but now serves in the capacity as the chair on the Oversight and Investigation Committee for the New York City Housing Authority. So that's who these guys are. We know a little bit about just who you are from the few voices that we've heard so far, but I'm going to ask you, just by way of introduction for folks who don't know you, where it is that your work connects with NYCHA communities. If you could share briefly so everyone can know who you are so we can get our conversation started.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lisa Kenner, and I am the Resident Association President of Van Dyke Houses. Now, my work starts off with making sure that NYCHA does what they're supposed to do. Everybody always say, she thinks Van Dyke is the White House. Yes, I do. If I don't think it's the White House, who else gonna think it's the White House? So we have to fight to keep a decent, clean, and safe place. And I'm one of those people that's out there, get in trouble sometimes, but it's all right. I can lay down and wake up with a peace of mind. But I'm also one to say that you'll all have to fight with us to keep our home. That's our home, that's our pride, that's our morals. And I grew up there. I was born and raised. When my mother died when I was 19, I was the first one in Van Dyke to have an apartment. Didn't have to be married. The man told me I had to be married. I wasn't going to be married. And that's why 40 years later, I'm still living there, and I'm going to still fight till the day I die.
That's right. Dr. Bloom, you're up.
So I've written a number of books, as you mentioned, and Public Housing That Worked was 2008, which looks at the history of the New York City Housing Authority. And my interest in it is not just in sort of the history of this very large, interesting institution, but its value to the people. So in that book and other books I've written about public and affordable housing, I've always tried to identify both the weaknesses, whether it was design or other kinds of issues that have come up, but also the value that people find in this. And I think the value to the city as a whole. I think it really is one of the only bulwarks against, a city that becomes really a city for the elite.
All right, Greg.
So I am a reporter, a dying breed, and I've been looking at the New York City Housing Authority and the way it's run, which you're all familiar with, for 5 years now. And when I started to look at it, I was shocked at the mismanagement and the lack of transparency and the consistent inability of the tenants who live in these buildings to have their voices heard. And I've spent the last 5 years writing about all of that. And where it's going is very difficult to know. There's now a federal judge involved. So I am trying to be optimistic, but my job is certainly not over. And I hope to continue to make sure that the New York City Housing Authority, the people, whoever happens to be running it, no matter what the mayor is, that they start paying attention for the first time and really do what they're supposed to do.
So before we go, please. Before we go to the council member, I just want to remind you that as soon as we meet these last two, we're going to be taking some questions and get our dialogue started. So if you do have something that you want to start off with, an issue that we can all talk about as a community, you can make your way to this aisle or this one, and I'll meet you there in a second. But council member.
Good evening. So I'm Councilwoman Alicka Ampry-Samuel, and I do serve the 41st Council District, which is Brownsville, Ocean Hill, Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights, and East Flatbush. And I'm excited about being in this role. The reason why I'm here and the reason why it makes sense is because I was born and raised in NYCHA. I grew up in Marcus Garvey houses. My mother lived in NYCHA. My grandmother lived in New York City public housing. And so I have seen a lot in my role just growing up and seeing my mother, seeing my family struggle every single day, but figure out a way to make a way out of no way. And leaving public housing, going off to school and having the opportunity to come back home and serve in different capacities, I then became an employee at NYCHA and served in the executive office. And I left NYCHA to run for city council. And I'm appreciative of my experiences. I'm appreciative of how I was raised, because I try to show people that I am not the exception at all in public housing. I'm not the exception, I am the example. And me and Ritchie, who are members of the New York City Council in really high-level positions throughout our careers, we are the example of what NYCHA produces. And so I try to say that. I make sure to say that every time I get the opportunity to let people know that this is who they're dealing with, and that's who I am. So it just makes sense that I'm here.
Councilmember.
Ritchie, Torres from the Bronx. I feel outnumbered, but proud to be here.
It's okay, we welcome you.
But before this year, I was the chair of the Committee on Public Housing for 4 years. And I presently chair the Investigations Committee, so I partner closely with Alicka to investigate some of the management failures at the New York City Housing Authority. But, NYCHA is deeply personal for me. I was born and raised in Thorogsneck houses. You're raised by a single mother who had to raise 3 children, often on a little more than minimum wage, lurching from one low-wage job to the next. And I grew up with many challenges, but the one constant that I had at every turn of my life was a stable, affordable home. Mm-hmm. And I often tell people I'm the youngest elected official, youngest council member in the city, and I would not be where I am today were it not for public housing and the stability it gave me and my family. And so I owe a huge debt to NYCHA, and I see it as my mission in life to do everything I can to preserve it for the next generation.
All right, so now you have some indication as to who's in the room and just why we invited them, but we're gonna start off with your question.
Hi, my name is Karen Blondell. I'm an organizer in South Brooklyn. I'm also a resident of public housing since 1982, when I was placed in Red Hook houses. When I got to Red Hook houses, the situation was already blighted. From my evidence and from the history of NYCHA was set up to take people from poor to self-sufficiency. The same time that blacks were moving here from the south of North America to the north of North America, a lot of rezoning started happening, and we found ourselves in public housing without the self-sufficiency side of the coin. Potential has been stolen from residents in regards to lead poisoning, mold, loss of wages. I work too. When I came to NYCHA, I was going in the Navy. And I lost that potential because I became pregnant out of wedlock and decided to keep my child. But NYCHA had in place Section 3 since 1982. It's a shame that most residents don't know Section 3 is there for them, and that is one of the things that is a part of the U.S. settlement. I have one question to ask to everybody here. When we as residents had to deal with zero tolerance from the Clinton administration to present time, how is it okay for NYCHA to have falsified, fraudulently reported about lead, mold, and everything else, and no one's being criminally charged? That's number one. Number two, how do they get to go forward with RAD or infill when they're under a federal investigation? That's my question.
So we're going to start off with the easy stuff, right?
Okay.
That's a lot.
So do we want to address RAD first, or should we, does a table need to be set to talk about even, Nick, I'm looking at you, Dr. Bloom, in some of the history that's inherent in there, talking about black people moving into public housing, which was something that started with a wave of folks who were being saved from the tenements and slums around before black folks were even allowed in.
Right.
Well, the way it works is that there were African-American residents of public housing back in the 1930s, Harlem River houses, and some of the other projects, but there was highly segregated. And what happened over time was that whites primarily, which, by the way, public housing was primarily built for white people in the city. People don't know this, right? But they, after World War II, they had a lot of opportunities to go to the suburbs, and they moved out, and it became primarily either African-American, Puerto Rican by the late 1950s.
They got GI billed, we got redlined.
Right.
That is correct.
Right.
That is correct. Yeah. That is
It's
a very
not
good
funny,
summary.
because we're still getting redlined in the cyber world now.
That's right.
So the red line is not going on the same. How you guys are doing it, number one, you're mixing the term public housing with affordable housing, and those are two different programs.
Which we
and
can
I don't
address.
understand. Wait,
Wait,
I don't
you've already got three good ones. Wait, save some for the people.
I don't understand. Let me finish.
Yeah.
I don't understand for the life of me how people in public housing are paying more rent than people in affordable housing when we're supposed to be the very low and low income tenants. Okay? I think a moratorium needs to happen tonight.
Do you want to comment on that?
I mean, I can, I just want to talk about the federal investigation, because I know a lot about that. So what has happened is the United States Attorney for Manhattan has spent the last 2 years looking into emails and documents and talking to mostly to the workers who work at that place, and have found this pattern of fraud that's just stunning. And what's happened is NYCHA decided that they want to make this all go away, so they signed an agreement called a consent decree. It has to be approved by a federal judge. That hasn't happened yet, but in the interim, what's happened is the U.S. Attorney, after they looked at all of this stuff, they decided there's actually criminal behavior here. So as we sit here, there is an active criminal investigation that is going on right now that I can't talk a lot about, but a little bit about, that they're looking into whether there has been a pattern of fraudulent filing of documents, where they're claiming, for example, that they went to a tenant's apartment and did an inspection, but they didn't go to the tenant's apartment. They just took a form and signed the tenant's name. And there's a laundry list of bad behavior here that is being looked at as we speak.
Can I say something? I want to go to the point about the rent being high. I can remember back in 1998, 1999, they was having a meeting at Thomas Jefferson, and because they was talking about taking the rent up, because remember we was on the ceiling rent.
Right.
But we as the people, the residents, we didn't go to the meeting. See, I can't just blame NYCHA for that as us. See, if we'd have went in there the droves, they couldn't do it, being that it wasn't that many people at Thomas Jefferson, you know, so they was able to do it. Just like when they have the town hall meetings, only a few people come down there to BMCC, you know, they have to have it once a year because HUD said you have to have it. But we don't come down there. I see very few people that have come. If we would come in the droves and come together, we can get a lot more done. I'm not just going to blame NYCHA. It's on us because we allowed them to get away with it.
Alicka, you have?
I just wanted to speak to the development and infill deals that you mentioned, as well as the RAD, because there was another sister here that opening remarks was related to the same topic.
So RAD, can you just, for those who don't know, break down rental assistance?
So in all honesty, RAD was actually started by Barack Obama, the way RAD is situated today, rental assistance demonstration, in 2011. And what it does is it converts the public housing units, public housing Section 9 units, to Section 8 housing. And so where you have now just like actual public housing apartment where they'll charge you 30% of your income to your rent, no matter if you make $200 or you make $20,000, that is your rent. But with Section 8, you get this, like everything else, a Section 8 voucher. And so it could be attached to the actual unit. And so that is what's happening across the city. One of the main examples of it is Ocean Bay, the old Edgemere houses in Far Rockaway, Queens, that went through a RAD conversion. And so they did everything from updating the apartments, actually renovated the units, to the buildings and the overall development. But I wanted to speak to all of that because we were going to have a hearing today at City Hall in the chamber. And we found out at the last minute today, it was supposed to be today, we found out on Monday that the executive vice president of real estate, who was supposed to testify at this morning's hearing, had quit or resigned on Friday. And so we had no one to actually to testify to the questions we had related to the previous RAD deals, the present ones, and what they had in the pipeline, as well as speaking to all of the development infill deals in the projects and the update on the status of affordable housing being built on the empty lots, as well as the 50-50 deals, the market rate versus affordable housing. And so we were looking forward to a productive hearing, and there was in the end no one there to testify. And so we had to cancel it yesterday with the hope and the commitment from the administration that the new chair, Stan, would be present to testify before the end of the month.
So I'm going to have to make my way over here, but while I walk, I want you, Dr. Bloom, to talk about the difference between affordability, as we've been told, in the context of public housing, about this split, what the difference is.
Wait, she didn't answer what RAD is. She just answered the definition of RAD. She did not answer the question. And the question is,
rental assistance.
How does NYCHA move forward with any business when they're under federal investigation?
No, you're absolutely right, and that's what we were going to talk about today. I don't think NYCHA should move forward with anything right now because there's questionable management, there's questioning dealings, and if there's any kind of investigation happening right now, if Judge Pauly is reviewing the consent decree, I don't think they should be moving forward. What they can be doing is just making sure that they're fixing the heat and hot water systems right now that are happening as we're going into the heating system, and they can make sure they're going into the apartments doing what they were supposed to be doing with the lead abatements. I mean, they can be moving forward with those current issues that are related to our health, well, related to everyone's health, but they shouldn't be doing any kind of deals or closing any kind of contract deals with development.
What's happening. And the bottom line is, I had the lead inspection last week, which is a new one. And all you did was you brought in somebody, an industrial hygienist, good name, good title. All he had was a flashlight. Come on now. Come on, I could do better testing by sending away for a kit to the EPA.
Your criticism is, I was a critic of the consent decree.
I am
because
too.
There's no evidence that
But I'm a critic of NYCHA.
that more monitoring is going to improve public housing. We've had a monitor for mold for 5 years, and we're no closer to remediating mold in public housing. So, Sheila.
So affordability.
Oh, yeah. So I think the easiest way to think about it is that public housing is developed and managed by the public sector, and the affordable housing sector is a public-private partnership. And so the rents in public housing are closely related to what the subsidy is, an annual subsidy that comes from the federal government, primarily at this point. The affordable housing sector is complicated. There can be Section 8 used in it, but by and large, it's private sector developers and managers who look after it, and so they basically they have been subsidized to build the projects, but that they have the affordable housing projects. But after that, they're looking for a return on investment that includes both lower income, middle income, and even some more of the higher income groups.
Can I actually add one more? Because I think
Yeah.
what I think the key difference is public housing is the truest form of affordable housing. In my opinion, the federal government defines low-income housing as 60% of AMI. 60% of AMI is $50,000 a year.
AMI, the American
Area median
area.
income, which varies widely from region to region. 50,000 is double the median income in my council district.
Right.
So most low-income housing that we're creating in the private sector is unaffordable to the poorest New Yorkers, for whom the only option is either Section 8 or public housing, which is administered by NYCHA. So truly affordable housing is public housing.
First of all, whatever project you live in, you need to find out who your tenants association is. Get a copy of your bylaws, because these tenants associations are keeping their members hostage. They got cools, they hooking up with their cools and shit. Excuse me, Mr. Vines. And this district council of presidents, whether it's south, north, east, or west, are a bunch of crooks. That tenant participation activity money that was meant to be spent for us in these developments to create programs and things for our families and so forth, that's HUD money. We don't even know what's happening with it. We was promised there was going to be a hearing. That ain't happened yet. The smoke-free proposal that is law now. It's a law. You call the CCC, the Central Complaint, what is it? 718-707-7771. The smoke is coming under your door through the windows and everything. You call there. They don't even have a code. You know, like when your toilet is broken, your door is broken, there's a code for that. There's no code for the smoke-free policy. I had a meeting in my building because I'm not going to sit up there and die. Okay, and here it is. All the smokers was stabbing me in my guts, but it took my guts to go down there and have that meeting, because we got rights too. NYCHA, they don't have the buildings posted with the laminated black and laminated posters. I'm doing all this work because the Tenants Association in Washington is full of garbage. They don't have the potential I have. I was a TA president for 3.5 years when the info piece came to Washington houses. We took out TPA money and it did not happen. But we probably should have let them tear the management office down because they don't do nothing.
So let me just jump in for a second.
I want to thank Mr. Vines. Anybody that want my email address, I will help you, because we are being screwed. And last thing, the only way we're going to get justice is by shutting 250 Broadway down. It's going to take organization. It's going to take us organizing. All these tenant association presidents that have been there 50 years that are serving no purpose, sit your tails down. It's about taking care of business. We want to shut 250 Broadway down. We're going to have to mobilize and organize, because NYCHA doesn't give a rat's tail about us. We are being smoked out. Our tenants, and they're criminalizing us with this smoke-free policy. So that way you mad at your neighbor and you cussing them out and they fighting you, and it's just another way to get rid of us. They don't give a rat's tail about us. We are dying. And I thank God for this opportunity to be here. We got our children sitting in the audience and we're perpetrating the fraud. Last thing. The city council paid $175,000 for a leadership academy that serves no purpose, because the TPA money that was spent from HUD already sent us to conferences in Atlanta and conferences here and conferences there with the National Coalition of Housing. All this old BS. We are dying in the projects. They don't give a rat's ass about us. Anybody that want my email address, I'm willing to die, because you're going to die anyway. You're getting smoked out, and the list goes on, and I am willing to die. Thank you, Mr. Vines, for inviting me. Mr. Torres and Ms. Samuels, I don't mean to disrespect you.
So let's not.
Because you earned your credibility. You are highly educated, but you are black just like we are, and in the end, your education ain't going to mean you a hella beans. Your cum laudes are none of that.
I don't have education.
Excuse me. Let me.
Proud of mine.
So wait, let's get centered here. There was a lot there to unpack. And a lot of you recognize some truth in what you heard just now. So I'm looking at you now, Ms. Kenner, as a tenant association president, someone who is
because I have some presidents sitting in here, and I know we do good work. Because one thing as presidents, you do not get paid. You know, it's a thankless job, but you live where you live, and you want better for your people and yourself. What the young lady was saying about people being presidents for the longest that haven't done anything. And I have to say, with my TPA funds, I take my people on places. If I go to conference, they go to conference. If those who want to go, there's signs up there, they read, sign up. I don't discriminate against anybody. I walk through the street asking people, do they want to participate? I'd like to take the people to the Black and Puerto Rican caucus, and I take it as an intergenerational. Take the kids and their parents. One time Housing told me, well, Ms. Ken, you can't take the kids. I said, you know what? I take the parents. Parents babysit their kids. This way I ain't got to stay up 2 o'clock in the morning because the kids don't want to go to sleep.
So what do you get from going to these conferences
What you get from going to the conference, you learn about all your elected officials. You learn workshops. They go to the workshops. There's a youth summit. They meet different kids from all over the state, not just Brooklyn or Queens or Manhattan. So the thing is, before it was the district used to have the money. We have to give them 10%. But after last year, they said we didn't have to give it to them because I wasn't getting mines anyway to Brooklyn East because I ain't seen a breakdown yet what you spend it on. So I understand what you're saying. And that's why we have to ask for a full account so you can see. Okay? And I think it goes better the way it is because everybody knows. But you know one thing? People have to come to association meetings and open up their mouth. No, it's not about offering nothing. See, it can't be about, it can't be about always about food and things like, you want to come to here because you want to know what's going on so you can pass the information on to your neighbor, to yourself.
So right now, we're hearing a lot about accountability on what really is a micro level and about neighbor to neighbor and what's happening. So I just want to broaden this up and talk about accountability that we get to push up the ladder all the way to the top to the people who are pressing a lot of buttons.
And let me just add, so everyone is hurt. There's a lot of pain. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation, this dialogue, because we haven't had it before. And the reason why we're having it is because the cover was lifted, right? And the cover was lifted because of media, right? Putting NYCHA in the issues and the mismanagement and the fraud on Front Street, full blast, in the spotlight. And so they can't hide. But remember, like, so I know with elected officials, with city council, we live in our districts. I live in Brownsville, right? And I'm raising a 12-year-old son in the middle of Brownsville. And so what's happening in our community, it's like an all-out attack on Black and brown low-income communities, not just across the city, but across this country. And so I like the fact that we're having this conversation, this dialogue, because we're rising up as a people. You see it with the electoral process and everything else. We're actually finally having a voice. We're being heard, right? And this is the first time, and it's an exciting moment for us. And again, we are excited.
And she do her job. She does her job.
Because
she's doing her job.
Because this is an opportunity for the voices to be, for the voices to be heard.
$75,000 job, and I go home with my welfare check. So don't sit here and make it sound like it's glorified.
Listen.
Let me.
Go ahead, finish.
So,
Crystal, come on.
And the fact that we are elected to office, I am in this position because the people in the district elected us to office in order to be a voice of the people, to hold the mayor accountable for the people, in order to hold the agencies that are supposed to provide a service to our people. We are here as a voice, and we were elected to office. And so this is a time right now where it's finally an opportunity to have a seat at the table, finally an opportunity for people to come together and organize and mobilize using the same words, being able to finally have this moment in time. And what are we going to do with it? Is the question, and it's time to have a conversation about the solutions and what are we going to do to actually turn this corner so that the residents can actually get what they deserve, which is safe, affordable, and clean housing that's not killing.
That's the only way we're going to get results.
In addition to shutting it down.
We got to go into the streets like the unions do. The unions go in the streets by the thousands. That's the only way we're going to shut this thing down.
Excuse me. Let me just.
Hey. Hold up. No more.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, Mr.
No, we're going to have one meeting here, okay? We're going to have one meeting, and if you would like to have a voice, the loudest voices will not always win. The people who bring their experience forward are going to be heard and not shouted down in any way in this forum. Yes?
Yes. Let me just say this for a minute. What the young lady saying about protesting around 250 Broadway. We did that a couple months ago. I didn't see her walking around that 7-10 times around that block. And out of that came out our chairperson resigned. You know, we went Jericho, I know, my knee's still hurting. But we walked around there about 10 or 15 times demonstrating. You know, we all can say what people should do. And I got to say, Councilwoman Alicka Ampry-Samuel is my city council person. And if she wasn't doing the right thing, Lisa would be out there hollering at 400 Rockaway Avenue. She just got in, and I think she's doing an excellent job. She's going to keep on doing an excellent job. You got to keep her in prayer. You know, that's why we can't go nowhere, because we too busy knocking each other down. And we would stop knocking each other down. You know what force we can be?
That's right.
I don't care if you ain't got 2 pennies in your pocket. You could be a force, but if we work together, instead of being haters and being jealous because she got a better pair of shoes than I do, and my mother would say, if you see something, work to get it. You know, all that hollering and hooping, and I ain't never seen that lady walk around 10 blocks.
Okay, back to here. We have a question.
Everybody's upset, and this
Absolutely.
is a very, yeah.
Come on.
I'm relatively new to NYCHA. I've only been there for 4 years, but I am the acting TA vice president. This is my acting vice president until we get acting president until we get elected. We can either go with the divide and conquer mode, or we can work together. We don't have to agree, but we also don't have to be disagreeable.
That's right, Ms. Williams. Tell it.
I don't know you. I don't have to like you. I do so far. But I do have to work with you, or we get nothing done. We can yell, we can scream, we can holler at each other, or we can holler at the people who are not doing what we need them to do. Together, you know, people call me a snowflake. Snowflakes create avalanches. I'm ready.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. My name is Tyree, and I am the resident leader of Lafayette Gardens in this district that we are sitting in. The first thing, I'm upset because I don't see other people from my district and from the neighboring district because we were redistricted. Now, let me get to it. I want to bring everyone together that was said this evening. And I want to go back to what the young man said. I'm proud that I live in public housing. And I'm not one of these poor people that live in the alley. It's about time that we stop talking about this to the people who write stories and ask questions and publish books. It's about time that we stop telling stories about NYCHA of 20, 30 years ago, because that's not the NYCHA that we live in. The New York City Housing Authority that we live in today is way different. We are not the tenements. We are not people coming from the island that came across the ship and all of that. We all have jobs. We are lawyers, doctors, nurses, policemen, teachers, engineers. And I want to know if someone in this room has because you live in public housing, you get a free card. You don't have to pay taxes. You don't have to pay rent. I need my card. I'm owed 7 years. Nobody have given me a card that said because I live in public housing that I pay cheap rent or free rent. As a resident leader, I have to take out of my own pocket. We don't get paid. And those books, I am a student at CUNY for public administration. Those tenements and all that stuff we learn about from way back when, they don't exist now. So it's about time, and when do we start to tell the story and the reality of what the New York City Housing Authority and public housing is today? Not yesterday, but today. Because when I went to get my food stamps, I told them I live in public housing. They said, that's nice. Do you have a nice apartment, but you don't qualify for food stamps because you make too much money. So I need my free card. And this story that y'all keep talking about, we the poorest people, we not the poorest people in the city. And nor is public housing apartments any less or more cheaper than affordable housing. The average, I live in this district right here, and the average rent that the residents, and we are not tenants anymore, they're not tenements. Those buildings they building now are not tenements. Go outside, make a right, and look, and you will see Next Generation Building is a modern, up-to-date skyscraper, and it does not say tenements. When you apply for it, they say if you want to be a resident here, that's why they changed the name. HUD changed the name from Tenant Association to Resident Association. When are we going to start telling the story of the reality that is this day, October 3rd, 2018?
So it is undeniable that NYCHA is not a monolith. There is no one type of way to be or person who you are if you live in NYCHA. There's many stories as there are bricks in those buildings. And we were fortunate enough to meet someone exactly where they live in this moment in 2018 right now. And we have a story to share with you.
All right. My name is Jonquilla Wheeler. I live at 422 Blake Avenue, Van Dyke. Van Dyke Projects? No. It's not called projects no more. It's called like a development. Okay. My name is Jonquilla Wheeler. I live 422 Blake Avenue, and I live in Van Dyke Development. They tell us that the word project makes the people feel more urbanized or, feel more like lesser than like where other people live. So they just took project out and they just said it's like a development now. My family have lived in Van Dyke for about 30-something years. It had been about early July 2012. The health department came banging on my door. They came in white hazardous suits on. He's like, we have lead. When he explained to me how like the older buildings still have the lead and like the asbestos and stuff inside of it, that's when I started understanding it. And then when I spoke to Dr. Abbey, he told me like the effects that it could have like on the child's learning and the way they grow. To the management office, I'm hysterical, I'm crying, oh my God, my baby got lead in his system, like, what can we do? They're like, his lead levels wasn't even that high, so even if you do pursue something, it's not gonna go nowhere, they're gonna throw your case out. They told me that his levels wasn't high enough. And when I spoke to lawyers this year, they said his levels was at a level of 11. It wasn't 3, because that's what they had me thinking. His levels were 11. That's like borderline retardation. His levels will affect him for the rest of his life, period. And, you know, now it's like, I gotta put on my big girl shoes, and what can I do for him? You know, I have to be the voice for him now. You know, I gotta, you know, go in with a clear mind and do what I have to do for my family, because this cannot, you know, it's not even about my family. It's about the whole development, period. I don't believe I'm the only one going through this situation, you know? So if I'm going through it, maybe 2 people in the next building going through it, and then 2 people in that building's going through it. So how can we get it started now so everyone could be on the same page? Because they can't keep treating us. They can't keep treating us like this. They get their rent every month. If they don't, we're getting kicked out. So, you know, how can y'all help us while we're helping you? We're helping you by giving you the rent. What can y'all do to help us while we're living here? That's the main issue.
So we thank Jonquilla for sharing her story and the story of her family. She also happens to be your neighbor right on your floor, yeah? So this is the reality of where we are right now. And thanks to the folks at Unmappable Productions, that's going to be part of a larger documentary that's forthcoming. So stick with us. We'll keep sticking with them and telling the stories.
Okay, I want to speak on behalf of the woman whose story I just seen, the sister who stood here before me, because it's one thing when we can sit here and talk about working together, but it's another thing when we're supposed to ask questions and not hear answers. Because I got a call back from my son's pediatrician, that call back that no one ever wants to get. And she said, he's fine, but his leg ain't. And then she said, but you know, it's not 0, but he's good. So I'm thinking, what kind of a lying hospital system are we in? And where can we get our answers? Because I am an herbalist and I already know about why the hospital system is not for us brown and black people. However, I have a home. I don't need to go to the hospital, but I need to go back home. I was fortunate enough to get myself out of NYCHA when I gave birth from my son who was conceived there. So that means in the 9 months that my child stayed in my womb, in those 9 months, his levels went up. Rest in peace, Dagen, the mother's house, who I was staying in, who NYCHA evicted us after she passed away in her home because we were not her son and daughter, even though my baby father took care of her for 10 years. She almost died in that apartment, but she was dying there the whole time because she lived there during 9/11. And do you think her home was clean? Sorry, I'm from Albert E. Smith houses in Manhattan. So her home was destroyed in 9/11, and no one cleaned it up. No one cleaned it up for 10 years, and no one even went to her house and knocked on her door and said, these are your reparations. Her old ass had to go and get it. Do you think we have time for all of that? Second of all, right next to Albert E. Smith houses is a beautifully renovated school. And I mean beautiful. It has glass. I have never seen a school like that in New York City. It is on South Street. But our children cannot go to that school. It is down the fucking block. All right.
Gently.
Our children see that every single day. That difference is in front of their faces. That is what this sir was trying to say right here. Our children are seeing these rapid changes happening in the world. And they are being told that they are not part of it. Ooh. So we want to ask questions, you know? We want to ask questions. When will our children be part of it? If these developments are happening within months, they're renovating houses. I mean, what on earth? Months it takes to renovate a house, but years and years of lead poisoning. I mean, this is a genocide here.
So as we are standing in the city right now, our mayor has an affordable housing plan, and there's a plan for NYCHA, and there's about a mile in between the two of them. Can we move forward in a real way and break down a Tale of Two Cities narrative if we have a mayor who's planning housing in two separate lanes without thinking of it holistically?
I don't think, personally, you talk about a Tale of Two Cities. I don't believe or have faith that anyone cares about us at all. And as an elected official, it's difficult. But I can speak my truth, and I can speak what I've seen, because I'm not worried about my next election. I'm not worried about the next office that I'm going to run for, because I'm just worried about how I'm going to, in a sense, protect the people, like protect my people. And when I look at the mayor's housing plan, and I look at all these infill deals, at no point at all do they take in consideration the NYCHA voice. When you look at Holmes Tower, when you look at Wyckoff Gardens, where they're really, how much of a input did the residents actually have in talking about those actual deals? And
why can't we ask? Why can't you come and ask us? We're all over the place. Come and find us. Come and find us and bring us to wherever you're. I don't know anything about the politics in this country because I'm an international woman. But my grandmother lives in a hood that's worse than NYCHA. She don't even got electricity or heating. You know, this is a place that's like, what in that hood, the city council, because of the socialism of different countries around the world, the construct of socialism, they will go to their doors. They will go to their doors and ask them what they need. What do you need? Arms? Do you need arms? Do you need food? Do you need school? Do you need to take our kids? And I'm talking about a poor nation that has been ravaged by this nation. So it is not about who is cared, who cares about who and who doesn't care. We know no one cares about us. That's why we're here. No one cares about us. That's why we're here. That ain't true. That isn't true.
I care.
If no one cares about us, then what the fuck are we going to tell them?
In all honesty, we elected.
You're a city council member, and you're telling us that no one cares about us.
I'm saying the city of, when I say the city of New York, I'm talking about the administration. I'm talking about the mayor of New York. I'm talking about the deputy mayors that are in place right now. We have a deputy mayor right now named Melissa Glenn, who is the deputy mayor of housing, who won't even have a conversation with city council members. And so we are constantly fighting an administration right now that says, you know what, we don't care, we're not meeting with you. We have a chair right now, it's a new chair of NYCHA, who won't even meet with the resident leaders, and said he want to know why. And so when I say right now that people don't care, it's at a point now where we can actually say that, and what are we going to do next, right? And that's the part about organizing and mobilizing that I'm talking about. And when we look at the structure of NYCHA, like NYCHA has a board. Anytime there's any type of decision that has to be made, it goes before the board. I think there needs to be a whole restructuring of the board itself, because they're all mayoral appointees, right? And so there are so many, and I think that there needs to be a change in the resident structure. You know, I say it all the time. I think there should be a resident chief administrator, a chief resident officer who's part of the executive team making decisions on the 12th floor at 250 Broadway. But those are things that need to that we have talked about and said we need to see some real changes in NYCHA and the administration, because right now.
I think Alicka hit the nail on the head. It was once said about the city council that the city council was worse than a rubber stamp, because at least a rubber stamp leaves an impression. And that's my opinion of the NYCHA board. But if you had NYCHA residents who were selected independently of the mayor, who would ask questions, who would challenge the bureaucracy, that's how you drive change. I think the solution lies in empowering residents to be members of the board and to be independent of the mayor. To be independent of the mayor.
Hold on, we have a question right here. I'll come to you, but right now we're here.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Reginald Bowman. I grew up down the block from here on Green between Cambridge and Graham, but I'm presently a resident of public housing since 1981, and I've served on many of the capacities, including resident association president of CEFLO at this point, and also a district chair. This is my councilwoman, and I've worked with most of the people that have been involved in public housing. My question is, after all these years, as we see the brand new structures going up and all of the different modernization going on, is there going to be a capital infrastructure master plan put into place to restore all of the physical buildings of the New York City Housing Authority's portfolio? We can argue about what we're going through presently. We've been talking about this now back and forth, and we have lawsuits going on, but the buildings are going to be condemned. Just like what happened with Prospect Plaza when they first started the Hope 6 project, and they eventually had to tear down all of Prospect Plaza and rebuild it, and it took 20 years. We're now at a point where most of our buildings and our facilities are 50 years old or older, and this is 2018. So my question is this: are we going to organize to ask for a capital infrastructure plan that stops all of the infill, stops everything else, and just focuses on making sure that our facilities and our buildings, our apartments are fixed before NYCHA does anything else? And then the other question is this.
No, let's stop there. Like, we want to know where the money is going.
Yeah.
So let's say, come on, we're going to meet right here. No more of this. We're having the meeting. Please stop. So, to you guys, about where the buck stops and the money and the operations, where is it going to be? So listen, we're not going to do this. Ritchie, is there a plan to overall, a centralized plan that works to make sure that the buildings, which are some 70 years now down the line?
There are PowerPoint presentations, but there's no plan. The greatest challenge NYCHA faces is a $32 billion capital need. Right. But here's the problem. Even if you were to magically pluck $32 billion out of thin air, the fact is NYCHA has no capacity to spend it. So these buildings are becoming unlivable, are collapsing at a much faster pace than NYCHA's ability to actually make repairs. When NYCHA testified before our heating hearing back in February, NYCHA said it would take 5 years to install a boiler. I mean, if it takes you 5 years to install a boiler, what makes you think you're going to, even if you had the $32 billion, what makes you think you could replace the thousands of roofs and elevators and boilers that are falling into deepening disrepair? So in order,
so wait,
before we
in
can make
real
the capital
life, what does that even mean, that it would take 5 years to fix a boiler?
No, that has to do
You
with...
have to fix the management.
It's the management is the core of the problem for all of this. Because if you are given money and you don't know how to spend the money, or you sit on the money, which is what they are always doing, then it's almost, what's the point of that? But one of the things I think is one of the underlying problems here, that people, I don't think people truly understand this. This authority is unlike any other city agency. And in this respect,
how so?
It has very little oversight. Basically, the only entity that looks down on the New York City Housing Authority and questions what it's doing is the United States government, which is HUD. And they have been asleep at the switch because this is the largest public housing authority in America by far. It's huge compared to everything else. So they haven't been looking. So if no one is looking, then you're able to sit on the money, or you're able to not take 5 years to put in a boiler. The only thing, you disagree with the consent decree, and the consent decree is basically an idea that a federal judge will now have some sort of power to make them do what they're supposed to do. The consent decree allows the federal judge to approve a monitor. The monitor will, we hope, have enough power to say when they are not installing a boiler for 5 years, that they can punish them, or they can go out and hire a contractor and put them in there. I don't know that this is going to work.
Yeah.
But one thing I do know is that a lack of oversight, if it continues, is a recipe for disaster. You have to have somebody who's looking at what's going on there.
Isn't NYCHA in contempt
the court for the last court hearing that they had?
Correct. What happened is they agreed. I absolutely, that is absolutely true. They signed. By the way, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting to mention the mayor. I don't know why I did that. The mayor is all over this thing, and so he signed the consent decree.
Listen, you know what? You're not on the microphone, so they can't hear you.
Let me just finish with the mayor. So the mayor signed this agreement, so did the Housing Authority, and almost immediately they were in violation of the agreement. You're correct. But here's what's happening. Now the federal government is now looking for, I think, for the first time ever, is actually looking at the Housing Authority. Will it work? I don't know. All I know is that if you don't look, you'll never see what's going on. And I think for the first time, at least someone's looking.
Well, Greg, if I could just take a slight tack on that. You say the federal government's going to be the savior of this thing, but the truth is that they have underfunded NYCHA at least since the 1990s, certainly even in the 1980s. And if you don't have the money, I mean, we can talk about reorganizing the board and reorganizing the structure, but the truth is they have, on an annual basis, the federal government has been providing, which has primarily been the responsible party for public housing in New York and the United States, has been providing maybe $200 to $300 million a year on enormous and well-known capital deficits. So let's hope that that HUD will have another view, and it'll be better because there'll be this federal piece. But again, without the funds, which I think people were talking about, without this money, no matter of management or restructuring is going to change. And I should point out the NYCHA board has been restructured within the last few years, was restructured as well to include resident folks. So it's money. I think follow the money.
Wait, before we go forward, and let's make this her turn right now to talking about solutions and just what is going to happen with the funds that are available now, as well as what it takes to make the money flow into a competent system that repairs boilers when we had 300,000 people who experienced no heat last winter as we're marching into winter now. Recently, I spoke with New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer, who's performed several audits of NYCHA, and he shared some of his ideas about a way forward.
We need data-driven work to help the struggling New Yorkers who need to understand what's going on. I think City Hall has to understand that there has to be a day-to-day, hour-by-hour operation to fix NYCHA. Call it ComStat, call it something else, but the same mold isn't going to work here. So we have to think about ways to break that glass ceiling, and that's going to take some new ideas, new people, maybe a new attitude that we haven't seen, but same old's not working.
Would you welcome the federal oversight in the form of a monitor?
Well, we have it, and we have to work with it, but clearly the oversight here has not been, or the planning has not worked, and we have to deal with that. Now, the one thing I want to just conclude and just say is there has to be federal help, right? Let's get some money here, let's get a management structure here, and let's go building by building and fix what I think is the greatest infrastructure that was built back in the day.
So just to finish up, the NYCHA chair is gone. Have enough people been purged from that system to make it go forward in a positive way for NYCHA residents?
I believe we need an entire restart on a management system within that bureaucracy. That bureaucracy makes the Department of Education bureaucracy look flowing without any incident. And sometimes, yes, you have to break apart the bureaucracy, but we don't discuss how to streamline the bureaucracy, using every transparent tool so the public knows the progress made. We don't reach out to our business community. We don't reach out to funders. We don't have that day-to-day ComStat. What's happening at Dykeman houses? What's happening at Ingersoll houses? What's happening at Smith houses? Why aren't we having war rooms every day? We do this for crime statistics. We do this for so many other things. Why don't we do it for NYCHA? NYCHA's in a crisis.
New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer, NYCHA's in a crisis. So this is the municipal level. Recently, in February, the IDC at the state level released a 9-point plan for what they see as a way forward for NYCHA, and it includes just some of the points requiring
No longer exists, but the IDC.
Well, but the points remain,
Okay.
which are to require 311 to accept NYCHA complaints. Right now,
They
there's
tried
no
that.
capacity for NYCHA complaints to go to 311, therefore no accountability because there's no public tracking. Asking for an independent monitor, city council oversight, as well as a repair certificate program and follow-ups for children who test with elevated levels of lead in their blood. So that's just a few of the 9 points. They may be dissolved and gone the way of the dodo, but some of those points may still have some relevance. I'm looking at you, council members. Right now, what sort of sway do you have? We heard that NYCHA answers to the feds.
Well, I was at the court hearing the Southern District in front of Judge Pauly, I think it was last week, and you know, everyone had an opportunity to testify, and our public advocate Tish James testified to very similar points, making some really critical recommendations, and I think that with a federal monitor, with the need for a new management structure, that can be built into what comes out of the federal monitor, and and what they implement into NYCHA, and so it's the way forward.
Yeah.
And a lot of the recommendations we've heard over and over again is just really about implementing them and forcing the administration to make it happen, but that's through the federal government.
So it seems like a three-headed monster of a problem when you have the city pointing the fingers at the state, who points the fingers at the feds, who are ignoring everybody, and it still takes 5 years to install a boiler.
Look, we need funding at every level, there's no question about it, but ultimately, the mayor appoints the chairperson. The mayor appoints the general manager. The mayor appoints the board. The mayor is responsible for the day-to-day management and operation of the housing authority. And we're the wealthiest city in the world. We have an $89 billion budget. We can afford to invest in NYCHA's capital infrastructure. We have the resources. What we're lacking is political leadership and political will.
So if we don't have the political will, there are some people in this room who are very passionate, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. How can we help you to make sure that that political will is manifest in a way that the mayor or any other person who would dare to run this city knows that this population is watching?
You have to hold the mayor accountable. You have to demand that the mayor invest as many resources in NYCHA as he's put into the for-profit private affordable housing plan. Right.
Come on.
Yes. Hello?
Well, to close Rikers Island.
You're here.
Okay.
And we're cutting the population in half, but.
My name is Carlton Burrows. I don't live in NYCHA, but listening to the city council person say that the chair for NYCHA doesn't want to meet with you all, that sort of shook me because they have a responsibility to the public. So what I wanted to remind all of us of is that true sovereignty lies with us. They work for us. So what is it that we could do to make sure that that chairperson meets with the city council to hear what you all have to say with regards to fixing this issue with NYCHA? But I also want to remind all of us that this is a perfect picture as to who our mayor, which campaign is funded by, who some of our city council people, who their campaigns are funded by. The private developer has more power, but we have more power than them if we were to work together. Just like we all showed up here tonight, we all need to show up in droves at City Hall to ensure that that chairperson for NYCHA, because this is not something that just happened yesterday. This is years and years. So all of you that have lived in NYCHA for all of these years and didn't come to the meetings that this young lady spoke of, it is time for you all to get active and start coming to these meetings, and there needs to be action right now. because this gentleman commented about the buildings being in condition to where they can be condemned and torn down. That could happen at any time. You should be more concerned about holding these people accountable and coming and doing the plan that this man spoke of, the capital improvement plan, a real plan that you can see that addresses these issues in your building so that you can save the building so that you can continue to live in the building. Remember, true sovereignty lies with all of us. We are the ones that they work for. We can make them do what needs to be done if we stick together. I'm going to give you the example this young lady gave. She said she had meetings. She only saw 2 and 3 people. That does not work. What works?
They mostly don't even have a place for us to meet in public housing.
Well, I gotta say,
we're meeting in
We can't hear you.
Okay?
I gotta say about this. I'm a board president. When we can't meet in the community room, we meet in the hallway. When we can't meet in the hallway, we meet in the breezeway. When we can't meet in the breezeway, we meet on the sidewalk. Nobody should rob you of your power. Nobody. And that's what's going on. Someone mentioned divide and conquer. That's a trick that's been used since slavery.
It's back.
It's never left. It's never left. Sometimes we're our own worst enemy. Someone mentioned earlier about jealousy. That's one of the biggest things that keep us from coming together. We have to put all of those things aside. We have to begin to love each other enough to say, if you need a stick of butter, I'm not going to talk about you tomorrow. And that's what's going on. That's why people don't come to meetings. That's why people don't associate with each other. The community has failed itself. We have to come together. We have to love each other. Like somebody said, we don't have to agree. We don't have to like each other. But at least we can agree to disagree, because we're not always going to see eye to eye. But a situation that is this grave and this serious, it should compel you to get up every day to want to do something about it. Because the other lady, she's angry. That kind of anger is not going to get us anywhere, because you lose sight of the real picture when you're angry like that. What we have to do is we have to recognize our sovereignty, our power, and use it. That's all I got to say, bro.
So just to let you know, just a little point, we are coming up on our last 15 minutes. And we're going to do the best we can to get as many voices forward. I'm looking at you. I'm walking over here.
I just want to say one quick thing. Lisa Kenna mentioned the fact that everyone rallied together and walked around 250 Broadway, and then what came out of that was the previous chair, the former chair, resigning. Everyone has to make people feel uncomfortable, because if we continue to make people uncomfortable and feel uncomfortable and know that we're not going away, then you'll see they actually start to do something. And one last thing I wanted to mention, one last thing, just in case it doesn't come out, there's an opportunity when we talk about development and they talk about privatization and different development companies coming in. When you look at the HUD regulations, it speaks directly to resident management. And so I think while we're organizing and pulling everyone together, we need to really start working around ways to bring residents together to start forming some of these management companies to really be a part of development and we talked about Section 3, but that's another big piece of it.
And that's underneath 964 regulations. Every resident should learn that.
That's the Bible.
Yes, that's what they say. That's the Bible.
So when can we get together and read the regs then?
I got it in my pocketbook downstairs. I ain't leave home without it.
Hello, my name is Lenone Faison. I live at 82 St. Edward Street, apartment 1D, dangerous dump. I have tried with management. I've been fighting this fight since 2007, and I still cannot find safe havens for my children. My stove is off, my windows are always open. I've tried. I went to court where they discredited me because they had a lawyer and I am representing myself. My evidence is refused. I look, I'm trying to find out why. Is it my color? Is it because I have my sons? The little boy, his name is Anthony Hackett, that's mine. I'm fighting every day to keep us alive. I called ACS to tell them I cannot keep my children safe. Someone called ACS because I would not allow them to let me live in deplorable conditions. Y'all exposed them to let dust and continue to disrespect me and violate me. I'm not gonna let you just keep on walking all over us. I look at you too. I'm telling you, you're snakes. You all need to be fired. Y'all need to be fired. I'm sorry, but you need to be fired. You're not helping me. I have this black man named Mr. Wayne in my thing. He knows about this gas leak. I called for a flood at 3111. I'm the 311 queen. I called 311. They won't let me go past NYCHA. I put in all the agencies complaining about this apartment. Now you want to move me to an apartment, a place where it's drug infested. And guess what? My apartment is still 1D. Am I still going to have the same problems? Mind you, my floor vibrates and it sounds like a horn. I'm not on a cruise. I'm on a Titanic. I'm sinking. I don't know what to tell you here. I'm really ready to have a nervous breakdown. I cannot sleep in my apartment. Y'all have deterred me. I am weak. Asking y'all, why? What did I do? What did I do? Holocaust I'm living in.
Come on.
I don't know what to tell you. You're making me weak because you won't help me. And I allow y'all to come in my apartment to enjoy my apartment. I have no enjoyment. If I ain't mopping up the floor, I'm cleaning up your mess.
Come on. So,
Worm to habitability is not afforded to me.
no one in this city should ever have to make the choice of being without a home or being
I want to
in a
go
home.
to live in the street, but I can't because I have children and ATS will take them.
No one should be forced to live without a home or a home that is making them sick. Where do we make the rubber meet the road in a situation like this? We can have all the town halls that we want,
to me because I
but
done
this
went
woman
to
is
court
going home
and
tonight.
watched them. They have
We feel you.
perjured
We feel
themselves
you.
in court. And I tried to show the judge to where I had to dismiss the case because you know what? She did like this. HPD court order. They don't want to come. They don't want to come, but you're supposed to come. It's a court order. On this day that they were supposed to come, my toilet was in my tub. My sink was in my hallway, and the bathroom door was in my kitchen, and my stove was on. You know what they paid attention? They paid attention to my 70-inch TV. It's not access. It's to look around my damn apartment to see what I have. I placed everything on my lease to let you know I'm going to have an air conditioner. I'm going to have a washing machine because I have an asthmatic.
Hold on.
I felt y'all covered it up.
I got you. We feel you right now, and I want to get an answer for you. Everyone
They can't answer me.
But listen,
because guess what?
but wait,
they
we all see you right here and
to
how raw this
discriminate
is.
against us.
I feel you. And we are in our last 10 minutes.
They sitting up there to find out what I got to say.
Yeah.
Because I speak the truth. Truth will set me free, but I'm ready to be free.
So come on.
This is a holocaust when it comes to me. I'm tired. I'm tired. I cannot sleep in this apartment. I'm afraid. I am afraid. I am afraid. I don't know what to tell you. I'm afraid.
Excuse me, can I just say something?
Can we just hold her up for
You
1
know
second?
what?
Can we just hold her up for 1
I couldn't
minute?
come. The apartment made me
I got
sick.
you.
I asked him for the minutes.
Yeah.
The man wouldn't send them to me.
But listen, we're a community here. This is the point of the town hall. This woman, and we got her. Yeah.
Every resident leader in this place is
in
going
my
to stand up.
community, I am a neighbor.
I am going to stand up. I'm going to help her. I'm going to help her.
So, right now, listen, we're on TV, but this is not about a TV show.
No, it's not.
This is real life. right here. The lights are going to go off, we're going to go home, and this is the situation that this woman is referring to every day. So listen, when these cameras are off, what's the action? Where do we go? Where are we meeting? What is a tenant association leader leading us to do about these real world problems? What is a city council ready to do? How do we write this story that centers this voice and doesn't start in a place of NYCHA from a deficit? How can we use the brilliance that I referred to earlier to move this situation into a positive?
4 words. Vote as a block.
That's right. Amen.
If NYCHA residents, there are 400,000 people who live in New York City housing, correct? So if you have an organized effort to vote with one voice, you will have a voice that people will actually listen to. But if you don't do that, and I don't know what the number of enrolled voters are, but is everybody enrolled to vote here?
So,
are all your neighbors enrolled to vote?
Right. Coming together right now. So, enrolling to vote, a 400,000 person voting block sounds very impressive. But from the outset, we made it known that NYCHA is not a monolith. We're not all of the same mind on everything. Is it going to take those 400,000 plus residents of NYCHA to become single issue voters, regardless of what your politics may be? If your home comes first, is that really a viable answer?
Of course. What's more important than your home?
Yeah, probably. I would say, yeah.
I mean, if the political leadership of the city has no regard for your basic living conditions, or refusing to provide you with heat and hot water, or protect you from lead poisoning, or lying to you repeatedly, of course you should hold them accountable. And if I have a constituent who's living in disrepair, I have an obligation to make sure they get their repairs. Of course I do. You should hold us accountable.
To that end, the Brooklyn Voters Alliance is right outside. They're tabling. They have registration materials. They even have some that you can take with you. I'm walking to you because you have a question. We're closing in on our last 7 minutes.
Well, I'm from White Grove Gardens, and we're starting a resident council with White Grove Gardens, also Gowanus and Warren Street houses. So that's what we have to do as tenants. We have to come together as one because we don't have money. So we have to stand up in numbers. So what we're doing in our development right now, we're getting ready to start a resident council. So if any of y'all want to help us out in starting a resident council, I could leave you with my number, or y'all could just come up to me and I could give you all the information.
Done. That's an easy one. Thank you.
Okay. My question's kind of short. You're talking about people in developmental housing, but I'm from a co-op, and we're going through just as much hell, if not more. And what's making it bad is the fact that the landlord, I should say the building management, can play the game of, well, you're the shareholder.
Gotcha.
And you're the person involved in fixing the pipes and the mold in your Frigidaire and no heat and hot water. That's your problem. But if you don't pay us, we're going to try to put you out. And so the deal is we're drinking contaminated water. Our residents are dying. And I'm still told that I still got to pay them. And I stopped because they're nothing more than crooks. And 141 Livingston is nothing but a cesspool. And it should be changed. And those judges need to be getting out of there. Because we're sick and tired of putting people on the street. We don't have no more shelters for homeless people. We can't even afford to live in a decent place, and everything's a co-op, and gentrification is the worst curse word ever. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. There was a young man who I was speaking to right before we went to that last video. Make your way down here.
I want to talk about something about for our children, the safety. My mom, I don't live in a NYCHA housing, but around my neighborhood, there is a lot of NYCHA houses. My school is right next to a NYCHA house. And I know a lot of people, and lots of my friends live in those houses. My mom, before I was born, used to live in one on Sutter. And I heard all these stories about what happened, how bad, and how it was dangerous. The living conditions were bad. And just 2 Fridays ago, I heard about this kid that got shot playing basketball around one of these neighborhoods. And I feel like now I can go outside to have fun with my friends because now I have to ensure that I'm safe, that I know I'm at, and I feel like how can NYCHA ensure that children are protected in those type of areas?
So we are actually in our last 3 minutes. Does anyone want to address this young man before we get out of here for the evening?
Well, I'm asking.
I'll definitely say that it's my responsibility as the elected official to make sure that you feel safe in your community. And all of the resources, all of the money, looking at the city budget, close to $89 billion budget in the city of New York. And what does it all mean? How does it have a direct impact on what we've talked about for this past hour and a half? Beginning with a child talking about he wants to protect his community and ending with a child asking a question about safety. And so I think that the system has failed. I think New York City has failed the residents. New York City has failed the residents of NYCHA. New York City has failed the children. And it's up to the new generation of elected officials that are coming in to fight for everything that we need and deserve. And all I can say is that I'm committed to this, and this is making sure that we all work together.
So we thank you for your commitment. This is going to end our broadcast. I invite all of you to stay with me and continue this dialogue. It was really our intention to center the voices of this community and create a living archive. You've helped us do that, and you've also shown us the work that is to be done. I thank you for coming here and sharing your voices and sharing your truth and being as raw with us as you've been and as passionate as you were. So we're going to walk out of this room a little different than when we came in, and people can't say they don't know. So thank you for being heard, and thank you for coming here tonight. We appreciate it. Good night.
Even though we don't know if I want to answer his question.